The electric clippers buzzed against her skull as chunks of auburn hair fell to the Arizona dust. Sergeant Victor Holden laughed while 30 recruits watched in horrified silence. He thought he was breaking the weakest soldier on his base. He thought wrong, because the trembling young woman he had just publicly humiliated held a rank that would make his blood run cold. And when General Catherine Monroe's helicopter touched down 48 hours later, her first words echoed across Fort Cascade like thunder. "That woman outranks every single one of you." Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Subscribe now because this story will stay with you long after it ends. The phone rang at 03:47 hours. Captain Megan Callahan was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her apartment floor with classified files spread around her like fallen leaves. 3 weeks of preliminary research, 17 incident reports, 42 complaints that had mysteriously gone nowhere. She answered before the second ring. Callahan. "Captain, this is Colonel Peters. General Monroe wants you in her office at 0600. Don't be late." The line went dead. Megan stared at the phone for exactly 3 seconds. Then she started gathering the files. Whatever was coming, she had been expecting it for months. General Catherine Monroe was a legend. 40 years of service, 3 combat tours. The first female officer to command military intelligence operations in a war zone. Her office at the Pentagon was smaller than most people expected, but the weight of authority inside those walls could crush careers with a single signature. Megan stood at attention, her dress uniform pressed sharp enough to cut glass. "At ease, Captain. Sit." Megan sat. General Monroe didn't look up from the file she was reading. Her silver hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had seen too much and forgotten nothing. "You're 24 years old," Monroe said. "Yes, ma'am." "Graduated Harvard at 20, commissioned at 21. Youngest officer ever selected for military intelligence special investigations." Monroe finally looked up. "You also look like you could pass for 19. Megan said nothing. She knew where this was going. "Fort Cascade," Monroe said, dropping a thick folder on the desk between them. "Remote training facility in the Arizona desert. 300 recruits cycle through every 12 weeks. On paper, it's a model installation. Excellent completion rates. Strong performance metrics. The commanding officer sends me glowing reports every month." "And off paper, ma'am." Monroe's jaw tightened. "Off paper, I've received 42 complaints in the past 18 months. Systematic harassment, financial exploitation, abuse that goes far beyond authorized discipline." She leaned forward. "Do you know how many of those complaints resulted in formal investigation?" "0, Megan said quietly. "0. Monroe's voice was controlled, but Megan could hear the anger beneath it. Every single complaint was withdrawn before it could be processed. Witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what they saw. Victims decided they had exaggerated. Evidence disappeared. Someone's protecting the abusers. Multiple someones. This goes beyond one bad sergeant. Monroe stood and walked to the window. "I sent 2 investigators to Fort Cascade last year. Both came back with clean reports. Nothing to see. Everything by the book." She turned to face Megan. "They were lying, of course, but I couldn't prove it." Megan understood now. "You need someone who won't be recognized as an investigator." "I need someone who can become invisible." Monroe's eyes were intense. "Someone who can endure whatever they throw at new recruits without breaking cover. Someone young enough and innocent-looking enough to be underestimated by every predator on that base." "You need bait." Monroe didn't flinch. "Yes, I need bait. Smart bait. Patient bait. Bait with a photographic memory and the psychological training to withstand systematic abuse without cracking." She paused. "I need you, Captain, but I won't order you to do this. The personal cost will be significant. You'll be alone in hostile territory with no backup and no extraction plan. If your cover is blown, I can't protect you until it's too late." Megan thought about the 42 complaints. She thought about the recruits who had suffered in silence, who had been broken by people wearing the same uniform she had sworn to honor. Who's the primary target? Monroe returned to her desk and pulled out a photograph. The man in the picture was in his early 40s, with the build of a former athlete going soft around the edges. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Sergeant First Class Victor Holden, senior drill instructor, 12 years at Fort Cascade. Every complaint traces back to him or someone in his circle. Monroe's voice hardened. He's smart, Captain. He never crosses obvious lines. Everything he does technically falls within his authority. But the cumulative effect is psychological torture. Classic abuser pattern, Megan said. Spread the damage across enough small incidents that no single event justifies intervention. Exactly. Which is why I need evidence of the whole pattern, not just isolated incidents. Monroe handed her a second folder. Your cover identity. Private Sarah Mitchell, 22 years old, college dropout from Kansas. No family, no connections, no one who will come looking if she disappears. The perfect victim. Megan opened the folder and studied her new life. Sarah Mitchell had a background carefully designed to attract predators, a history of failed relationships, dead-end jobs, and desperate decisions. She was the kind of person bullies loved to target because they assumed no one would care. When do I leave to? Tomorrow. Your cover documentation is already in the system. As far as the Army is concerned, Private Sarah Mitchell enlisted 3 weeks ago and is being assigned to Fort Cascade for basic training. Megan stood. Understood, ma'am. I'll get it done. Captain. Monroe's voice stopped her at the door. Whatever happens out there, remember who you really are. Don't let them break the woman underneath the mask. Megan nodded once. They can try, General. They can try. The bus that delivered new recruits to Fort Cascade was deliberately uncomfortable. 12 hours of hard seats, no air conditioning, and minimal stops. Megan sat near the back watching her fellow passengers through half-closed eyes. Most were young 18-19, barely out of high school. Some were scared, others were trying too hard to look tough. A few sat in stunned silence, already questioning the decisions that had brought them here. She had memorized their files before boarding. Private Destiny Brooks, 19, from Detroit. Single mother who had given up her daughter for adoption 2 years ago. Joined the Army to build a life she could be proud of. Protective instincts. Loyal to a fault. Private Marcus Chen, 21, from San Francisco. Quiet, observant, intelligent. Pre-law student who had dropped out after his father's death. Kept a journal. Noticed everything. Private Tyler Grant, 20, from small-town Texas. Good kid from a military family. Desperate to prove himself. Easily manipulated by authority figures. Each of them would play a role in what was coming. Megan just didn't know what roles yet. The bus shuddered to a stop. Welcome to hell, ladies and gentlemen. The driver's voice was flat, almost bored. Fort Cascade awaits. So, Sergeant Victor Holden was waiting on the parade ground. Megan recognized him immediately from the photograph, but the picture hadn't captured the predatory energy that seemed to radiate from his body. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the recruits stumble off the bus like a wolf studying a flock of sheep. His eyes moved systematically through the group, evaluating, categorizing, selecting. When they landed on Megan, they stayed. She made herself smaller, hunched her shoulders, let her gaze drop to the ground. Every instinct screamed at her to stand tall, to project the confidence she had earned through years of training. But Sarah Mitchell wasn't confident. Sarah Mitchell was scared. Listen up, maggots. Holden's voice cracked across the parade ground like a whip. You are now property of the United States Army. Whatever you were before you got on that bus doesn't matter anymore. Here you are nothing. Less than nothing. You exist to follow orders and become soldiers. Some of you might actually achieve that goal. His eyes swept the formation again, pausing on Megan. Most of you won't. A corporal started calling names, directing recruits to their assigned barracks. Megan waited, maintaining the nervous posture of someone who expected to fail. Mitchell Sarah. She stepped forward. Barrack 7. Move it. She moved. Destiny Brooks found her within the hour. Hey, you're my bunkmate. Destiny's voice was warm, and her handshake was firm. I'm Destiny. Where you from? Kansas, Megan said quietly, letting a hint of rural accent slip into her voice. Small town. You probably never heard of it. Girl, I'm from Detroit. Trust me, small towns sound pretty good right now. Destiny laughed and started unpacking her gear. So, what brought you here? And don't give me that serve my country recruitment poster bullshit. Nobody ends up at Fort Cascade because things are going well. Megan let herself smile just a little. Bad decisions. Worse relationships. Ran out of other options. Yeah, I feel that. Destiny's expression softened. Well, we're in this together now. Whatever happens, we stick together. Deal. Deal. From across the barracks, Marcus Chen watched their exchange in silence. His journal was already open on his bunk, and his pen moved steadily across the page. The trouble started on day 3, morning formation. Temperature already climbing toward triple digits. Holden was in a mood. Megan could see it in the way he moved, the barely contained aggression in every gesture. He was looking for a target. Mitchell. She felt her stomach tighten, but kept her face carefully neutral as she stepped forward. Yes, Sergeant. Holden circled her slowly, his boots crunching against the packed dirt. The other recruits watched in uncomfortable silence, grateful not to be the focus of his attention. Your boots are a disgrace, Mitchell. When was the last time you polished them? This morning, Sergeant. This morning. He laughed, and the sound had no warmth in it. Either you're lying, or you're too stupid to know the difference between polished and pathetic. Which is it? Megan looked down at her boots. They were perfect. She had spent 45 minutes on them before dawn. But she had known this moment would come. Men like Holden didn't need real violations. They created them. I'm sorry, Sergeant. I'll do better. Sorry doesn't cut it, Mitchell. Maybe some extra duty will help you remember standards. He turned to address the formation. This recruit needs remedial instruction in basic military appearance. She'll be scrubbing the latrine tonight while the rest of you sleep. Yes, Sergeant. She kept her voice flat, defeated. Inside, she was already cataloging first documented incident of targeted harassment. No legitimate basis. Witnessed by 32 recruits. Holden's smile suggested satisfaction. He had found his prey. The latrine duty was the beginning. By the end of the first week, Megan had accumulated more punishment assignments than any other recruit in the company. Extra guard duty, kitchen detail, equipment maintenance. Holden found fault with everything she did, no matter how perfect her performance. You're too slow, Mitchell. Your posture is wrong, Mitchell. Your attitude needs adjustment, Mitchell. Each criticism was delivered publicly, designed for maximum humiliation. Each punishment was technically within regulations, carefully calibrated to exhaust and demoralize without crossing obvious lines. Destiny watched it happen with growing anger. This is bullshit, she muttered to Megan after yet another unjust assignment. Everyone can see your boots are fine. Everyone knows you're not slower than the other recruits. He's targeting you specifically. Maybe I deserve it, Megan said quietly, staying in character. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. No. Destiny's voice was fierce. Don't you dare start believing that. This isn't about you, it's about him. He's a bully, and he picked you because he thinks you won't fight back. Marcus Chen appeared beside them, his voice low. She's right. I've been watching. He does this to one recruit every cycle, breaks them down until they wash out or transfer. Then, he picks a new target. Megan looked at him. How do you know that? I ask questions. Listen to answers. Marcus's eyes were sharp. The sergeants in the other companies talk. They know what Holden is, but nobody does anything because his completion rates look good on paper. The recruits he destroys just disappear from the statistics. Has anyone ever reported him? Marcus's expression darkened. A few have tried. The complaints never go anywhere. People get transferred. Files get lost. Eventually, everyone stops talking. Megan filed the information away. So what do? We survive, Marcus said simply. That's all any of us can do. Week 2 brought escalation. Holden had tasted blood with his initial harassment, and like any predator, success only made him bolder. The punishment details increased. The public criticism became more personal, and he began involving other recruits in his campaign. Grant, Tyler. Grant stepped forward nervously. Yes, Sergeant. Inspect Mitchell's bunk. I want every regulation violation documented. Tyler's face went pale. Everyone could see that Megan's bunk was perfect sheets, tight gear, aligned personal items arranged with textbook precision. But Holden's expectation was clear. Sergeant, Did I ask for your opinion, Grant? Inspect the bunk. Tyler walked to Megan's area, like a man approaching his own execution. His hands trembled as he checked the sheets, the footlocker, the carefully polished boots. There was nothing wrong. They both knew it. Well? Holden's voice was impatient. Tyler hesitated. His eyes met Megan's for a brief moment, and she saw the conflict there, the decent person struggling against the fear of authority. There's a piece of lint on the pillow, Sergeant. Holden's smile was triumphant. Outstanding detective work, Grant. Mitchell, since you clearly need remedial instruction and basic hygiene, you'll be responsible for cleaning the entire barracks tonight. Alone. Yes, Sergeant. After the formation dispersed, Tyler approached her with obvious shame. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't want to. He made me. It's okay, Megan said, and she meant it. Tyler wasn't the enemy. He was another victim coerced into complicity by someone who understood exactly how to exploit fear and obedience. But the pattern was established now. Holden wasn't just harassing her directly anymore. He was corrupting the entire unit, making everyone complicit in the abuse. The investigation was entering a new phase. The breaking point came during a night training exercise. Temperatures had dropped, but not enough to provide relief from the brutal Arizona climate. The recruits were exhausted, hungry, and pushed to their physical limits. Holden found his opportunity in a simple navigation exercise. Mitchell, you're partnered with Thompson. Private Thompson was one of Holden's favorites, a large, aggressive recruit who had learned quickly that pleasing the sergeant meant protection from punishment. His smile when he heard the pairing made Megan's instincts flare with warning. The exercise required teams to carry heavy equipment across rough terrain within a specified time. Simple enough, unless your partner was actively sabotaging your efforts. Thompson stumbled at crucial moments. He took wrong turns that wasted precious minutes. He accidentally dropped equipment that Megan had to scramble to retrieve. By the time they reached the finish point, they were dead last. Pathetic performance, Mitchell. Holden's voice carried across the exhausted formation. This is what happens when we lower our standards. Some people just don't belong in the Army, no matter how hard we try to help them. Megan stood at attention, sweat and dust coating her face, her muscles screaming with exhaustion. She said nothing. Maybe tomorrow we'll find out if you can do any better. Holden's smile was cruel. Or maybe we'll finally see the truth about what you really are. As the recruits were dismissed, Destiny fell into step beside her. How are you holding up? Megan looked at her, and for just a moment, something flickered behind the mask of Private Sarah Mitchell. Something harder. Something dangerous. I'm exactly where I need to be, she said quietly. And Sergeant Holden is about to learn that some battles aren't won in the moment. Destiny frowned. What do you mean? But Megan just shook her head and walked toward the barracks, leaving her friend staring after her with a growing suspicion that nothing about this situation was what it appeared to be. The game was far from over, and Holden had no idea what was coming. The next morning came too fast. Megan had slept for exactly 2 hours before guard duty pulled her back into the darkness. Her body ached. Her eyes burned. But her mind remained sharp, cataloging every detail of what was happening around her. Holden was escalating. She could feel it in the way he watched her during formation, the hunger in his eyes growing more intense with each passing day. He had found his target, and now he was preparing to break her completely. Mitchell front and center. She stepped forward, keeping her movements deliberately sluggish. Sleep deprivation was starting to show on her face, and she let it. The more broken she appeared, the bolder Holden would become. "You look like death, Mitchell." "Rough night." "Guard duty, Sergeant." "Guard duty." He laughed and turned to the other recruits. "Private Mitchell here thinks guard duty is an excuse for looking like a zombie. Let me tell you something, Mitchell. Real soldiers don't need sleep. Real soldiers push through. Are you a real soldier?" "I'm trying to be, Sergeant." "Trying." He spat the word like it was poison. "Trying isn't good enough. Tonight you'll pull another 4-hour shift. Maybe that will teach you what real effort looks like." Destiny's hands clenched at her sides. Marcus wrote something in his journal without looking down. Megan simply nodded. "Yes, Sergeant." 2 nights without sleep. He was pushing her toward the edge, waiting to see how far she could bend before she broke. What he didn't understand was that she had been trained for this. 48 hours was nothing. She had survived worse in places he couldn't imagine. But she couldn't show him that. Not yet. The morning continued with physical training that pushed every recruit to their limits. Running, push-ups, sit-ups, more running. The Arizona sun climbed higher, turning the training ground into a furnace. Megan kept pace with the middle of the pack, never standing out, never falling too far behind. But Holden wasn't satisfied. "Mitchell, you're lagging. Pick it up or you'll run an extra mile." She pushed harder, her lungs burning. "Faster, Mitchell. My grandmother moves faster than you." The other recruits exchanged uncomfortable glances. Everyone could see she was keeping up. Everyone knew Holden was lying. But nobody said anything. That was the real victory for men like Holden. He didn't just abuse his victims, he made witnesses complicit through their silence. Every recruit who watched without speaking became part of the system that protected him. Megan filed it away. More evidence. More patterns. The case was building. After training, Destiny caught up with her near the water station. "You need to eat something. You've missed 3 meals because of his bullshit assignments." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Nobody's fine after what he's putting you through." Destiny grabbed her arm. "Sarah, listen to me. I've seen this before. Back home, I watched my mother's boyfriend tear her down piece by piece until she didn't recognize herself anymore. This is what abusers do. They isolate you. They exhaust you. They make you doubt your own reality." Megan looked at her friend, and for a moment, the mask slipped. "I know exactly what he's doing, Destiny." "Then why aren't you fighting back? Why are you just taking it?" "Because some fights require patience." Destiny frowned. "What does that even mean?" Before Megan could answer, a commotion erupted near the barracks. "Everyone formation. Now!" They ran. Holden was standing in the center of the parade ground, his face twisted with anger. Several recruits were already lined up, their expressions nervous. "Someone," Holden said slowly, "has been stealing from the equipment room. 3 sets of night vision goggles are missing. These items are worth thousands of dollars. Property of the United States Army." The recruits shifted uncomfortably. "Nobody leaves this formation until the thief confesses, or until I find them myself." His eyes swept the ranks, predatory and calculating. "And trust me, I will find them." Marcus leaned slightly toward Megan. "The equipment room is locked. Only sergeants have keys." She didn't respond, but she understood what he was implying. Either a sergeant was involved in the theft, or someone was being set up. 2 hours passed. The sun beat down mercilessly. Recruits swayed on their feet. One woman fainted and was dragged away by medical personnel. Still, Holden refused to dismiss them. "Nobody's talking fine. We'll stay here all night if we have to." Another hour. Finally, Holden walked directly to a recruit named Private Davis, a quiet young man who had barely spoken since arriving at Fort Cascade. "Davis, empty your footlocker." "Sergeant, I didn't." "I said empty it, now." Davis's hands shook as 2 other sergeants escorted him to the barracks. 15 minutes later, they returned. One of them was carrying night vision goggles. "Well, well," Holden's voice was triumphant. "Looks like we found our thief." "I didn't steal anything." Davis's voice cracked with panic. "Those aren't mine. Someone planted them." "That's what they all say." Holden gestured to the MPs. "Take him." As Davis was led away, still protesting his innocence, Megan watched Holden's face. There was satisfaction there. Something that went beyond catching a thief. He had planned this. She was certain of it now. Later that night, Marcus found her outside the barracks. "Davis didn't steal those goggles." "I know." "You know?" He studied her face. "How do you know?" "Because I saw Corporal Reynolds coming out of the equipment room at 0300 last night. He had a bag with him." Marcus's eyes widened. "Reynolds works directly for Holden." "Yes, he does." So Holden framed Davis. But why? Megan had already figured it out. Davis had been asking questions. He had mentioned to other recruits that he thought the financial charges on his account didn't add up. He was getting too close to something. Davis noticed discrepancies in the recruit accounts. Money being charged for equipment we never received. Fees for services that don't exist. Marcus went pale. "They're stealing from us." "They've been stealing from recruits for years." Davis was about to figure it out, so they eliminated him. "We have to report this." "To whom?" Megan's voice was flat. "Holden's direct supervisor is Captain Morrison. Morrison hasn't set foot on the training ground in weeks. The base commander thinks everything here is perfect because that's what the reports tell him. And anyone who tries to file a complaint through official channels finds their paperwork mysteriously lost. So we're trapped." Megan looked at him, and something flickered behind her eyes. "Nobody's trapped forever, Marcus. Sometimes you just have to wait for the right moment." Before he could ask what she meant, she walked away into the darkness. The next week brought new horrors. Holden had moved beyond simple harassment. He was now conducting what he called stress inoculation training exercises designed to push recruits past their mental and physical limits. The reality was pure sadism. "Mitchell, Grant, Chen, you 3 are team leaders for today's exercise." Megan felt the trap closing. By making them leaders, Holden was setting them up for failure. Whatever went wrong would be their responsibility. The exercise was a simulated rescue mission. Teams had to navigate rough terrain, locate a wounded mannequin, and carry it back to base within a time limit. Simple enough, except Holden had stacked the deck. Megan's team was given faulty maps. Tyler's team was assigned members who could barely walk after a morning of punishment exercises. Marcus's team was given equipment that broke within the first 10 minutes. All 3 teams failed. "Pathetic!" Holden screamed at them as they stood in formation. "You call yourselves soldiers. You call yourselves leaders. You couldn't lead a dog to its dinner bowl." He focused on Megan with particular venom. "Mitchell, your team was the worst. Dead last. Your incompetence got your wounded man killed. In a real situation, that blood would be on your hands." "The maps were incorrect, Sergeant." The words were out before she could stop them. Silence fell over the formation like a hammer. Holden's face went red. "What did you say to me?" Every instinct told Megan to back down, to apologize, to stay in character. But something had shifted. 3 weeks of abuse. 3 weeks of watching good people suffer. 3 weeks of documenting crimes that had been going unpunished for years. She was tired of playing weak. I said the maps were incorrect, Sergeant. Grid coordinates were off by several degrees. Any team using those maps would have failed regardless of leadership. Holden stepped closer until his face was inches from hers. Are you accusing me of sabotaging a training exercise, Mitchell? I'm stating facts, Sergeant. The other recruits held their breath. Nobody talked to Holden like this. Nobody. Facts. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want facts. Here's a fact, Mitchell. You are the worst recruit I have ever trained. You are weak. You are stupid. You are a waste of Army resources. The only reason you're still here is because I haven't decided how to get rid of you yet. He leaned even closer. But I will, Mitchell. I promise you that. Before this training cycle is over, I will break you so completely that you'll forget you ever had a spine. Megan held his gaze without flinching. Is that a threat, Sergeant? Something dangerous flashed in Holden's eyes. For a moment, she thought he might actually hit her. Then he smiled. Dismissed. Everyone except Mitchell. She's got a long night of remedial training ahead of her. As the other recruits filed away, Destiny tried to stay behind. Move it, Brooks, unless you want to join her. Destiny hesitated, then mouthed, I'm sorry, as she was forced to leave with the others. Megan stood alone on the parade ground as the sun began to set. Holden circled her slowly. You think you're smart, don't you, Mitchell? You think you're different from the others. I've seen your type before. You come in here thinking you're special, thinking the rules don't apply to you, thinking you can outlast me. He stopped directly in front of her. Let me tell you something. I've been doing this for 12 years. 12 years. I've broken hundreds of recruits just like you. Some of them were tougher than you, stronger, smarter, and every single one of them crawled away in the end. Maybe they didn't have anything worth fighting for. Holden's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means some people have more at stake than their own comfort, Sergeant. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then he laughed. I'm going to enjoy this, Mitchell. I really am. Starting tomorrow, you're going to learn what real suffering feels like. And when I'm done with you, you're going to wish you'd never set foot on my base. He turned and walked away. Megan watched him go, her face expressionless. But inside, she was calculating. Holden had just made a critical error. His threat had been witnessed by the recruits who hadn't left quickly enough. His promise of suffering had been heard by at least a dozen people. He was getting careless. That meant he was getting close to doing something she could actually use. She just had to survive long enough to catch him. The following days became a blur of exhaustion and abuse. Holden made good on his threats. Megan was assigned to every punishment detail, every night shift, every miserable task he could invent. She slept in 2-hour increments. She ate when she could. She pushed her body past limits that would have broken most people. And she documented everything. Every arbitrary punishment. Every humiliating public criticism. Every witness who could testify to what they had seen. Her photographic memory captured details that would fill a prosecution file, dates, times, exact words spoken, expressions on faces. Destiny became her lifeline. You need to eat this. Her friend pressed a protein bar into her hand after formation. And don't tell me you're fine. You haven't been fine in a week. Megan took the bar. Her hands were shaking slightly, a sign of the toll the sleep deprivation was taking. Thanks, Sarah. Destiny's voice dropped to a whisper. Something's not right about all of this. I've been thinking. The way you handle pressure, the way you never really break no matter what he does. It's like you're playing a part. Megan met her eyes. What do you mean? I don't know. But I know scared people, and you're not scared. Not really. Underneath everything you're waiting for something. The observation was too close to the truth. Megan forced a tired smile. I'm just stubborn Destiny. That's all? No, it's more than that. Destiny shook her head. I don't know what's really going on with you, Sarah Mitchell. But I know one thing: you're not who you pretend to be. Before Megan could respond, the alert siren blared across the base. All recruits, emergency formation, now. They ran. Holden was standing at the center of the parade ground with a smile that made Megan's blood run cold. Listen up. Command has authorized a special training exercise, leadership assessment under extreme stress conditions. His eyes found Megan in the formation. Some of you have been struggling with basic military standards. Tomorrow we're going to find out exactly who deserves to wear this uniform and who doesn't. He paused for effect. Mitchell, front and center. She stepped forward, her heart rate steady, despite the exhaustion that weighed on every muscle. Tomorrow's exercise will focus specifically on your development, Mitchell. You'll demonstrate either your capability as a soldier or your complete failure as a human being. He smiled. I'm betting on failure. What kind of exercise, Sergeant? His smile widened. You'll find out tomorrow. But I promise you this: when it's over, everyone on this base will understand exactly what happens to people who think they can challenge my authority. He dismissed the formation, but his eyes stayed locked on Megan. The message was clear. Tomorrow would bring something terrible. Something designed to break her once and for all. Megan walked back to the barracks, feeling the weight of 30 pairs of eyes on her back. Some were sympathetic. Some were relieved it wasn't them. A few Holden's favorites looked almost eager for whatever was coming. Marcus fell into step beside her. This is bad. I know. You should report him. Go to Morrison. Go to the MPs. Go to anyone. And say what? That a drill sergeant is being mean to me. That's not a crime, Marcus. It's not even unusual. What he's doing goes way beyond being mean. Maybe, but I need proof. Real proof. Something that can't be explained away or covered up. She stopped walking. Tomorrow, whatever happens, I need you to watch. I need you to remember every detail. Can you do that? Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Who are you really? I'm Sarah Mitchell, a college dropout from Kansas. No, you're not. His voice was quiet, but certain. Nobody survives what he's been putting you through without breaking. Nobody stays that calm under pressure without serious training. And nobody talks about needing proof unless they're building a case. Megan said nothing. I don't know what you're doing here, Marcus continued. But whatever it is, I want to help. Tell me what you need. She looked at him, this quiet young man who had noticed too much and asked the right questions. He could be trusted. She was almost certain of it, but not yet. Not until she knew what tomorrow would bring. Just watch, she said finally. Document everything you see, and when the time comes, be ready to tell the truth. She walked into the barracks without looking back. Tomorrow would change everything. The sun rose blood red over Fort Cascade. Megan had been awake for hours, lying in her bunk and staring at the ceiling while the other recruits slept. Her body screamed for rest. Her muscles ached from weeks of abuse, but her mind was razor sharp, calculating every possible scenario for what was coming. Holden had promised something terrible. She believed him. Destiny stirred in the bunk beside hers. You didn't sleep at all, did you? A little. Liar. Destiny sat up and looked at her friend with worried eyes. Sarah, whatever happens today, I've got your back. We all do. Marcus, Tyler, even some of the others who've been too scared to say anything. We're not going to let him destroy you. Megan felt something tighten in her chest. These people had become more than cover assets. They had become friends, and that made what was coming even harder. Just promise me something, she said quietly. Anything. Whatever you see today, don't interfere. No matter how bad it gets. Promise me. Destiny's face twisted with confusion. I can't promise that. If he hurts you, if you interfere, you become a target too, and I won't be able to protect you. Megan gripped her friend's hand. Please, Destiny, trust me. Can you do that? For a long moment, Destiny just stared at her. Then slowly she nodded. I don't understand what's happening, but I trust you. That's enough. For now, that's enough. The morning formation began at 0600. The heat was already oppressive, the kind of suffocating Arizona morning that made breathing feel like work. 32 recruits stood at attention while Holden paced in front of them like a predator savoring the moment before the kill. His eyes found Megan immediately. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Mitchell, perfect weather for what I have planned. She said nothing. Today we're going to conduct a special inspection. Military appearance standards. He smiled, and the cruelty in it made several recruits shift uncomfortably. Some of you have been getting sloppy. Some of you seem to think that regulations are suggestions rather than requirements. He stopped directly in front of Megan. Mitchell, step forward. She stepped out of formation, her movements deliberately slower than they should have been. Every recruit was watching. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Holden circled her slowly, his boots crunching against the packed dirt. He examined her uniform, her boots, her posture. Everything was perfect. She had made certain of that. But perfection didn't matter. It never had. Your hair, Mitchell. Megan felt her pulse quicken, but kept her face neutral. Sergeant, your hair is out of regulation. A murmur rippled through the formation. Everyone could see her hair was pulled back in a textbook regulation bun, not a strand out of place. The accusation was absurd. My hair meets all regulatory standards, Sergeant. Are you arguing with me, Mitchell? I'm stating a fact, Sergeant. Holden's smile widened. A fact. Let me tell you a fact, Private. I am the authority on this training ground. I decide what meets standards and what doesn't. And I'm telling you that your hair is a disgrace to the United States Army. He turned to address the formation. This recruit has been a problem since day one. Attitude issues, performance issues, a complete inability to follow simple military standards. His voice rose with theatrical indignation. I've tried patience. I've tried extra training. Nothing works. So today we're going to solve the problem permanently. He reached into his equipment bag and pulled out electric hair clippers. The buzzing sound cut through the morning air like a chainsaw. Gasps erupted from the formation. Destiny's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus went rigid, his eyes wide with horror. Sergeant, this isn't authorized punishment. Megan said, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline flooding her system. I decide what's authorized on my training ground, Mitchell. Forced head shaving requires documentation. Chain of command approval. Due process. Due process. Holden laughed. Listen to the recruit trying to lecture me about procedure. He gestured to two soldiers standing nearby. Grant Thompson. Hold her arms. Tyler Grant's face went white. Sergeant, I don't think... Did I ask what you think, Grant? I gave you an order. Hold her arms. Tyler looked at Megan with anguished eyes. She saw the conflict there, the decent person struggling against the fear of authority, the soldier trained to obey fighting against the human being who knew this was wrong. It's okay, she said quietly. Do what he says. The words seemed to break something in Tyler. His shoulders slumped as he stepped forward and took hold of her left arm. Thompson grabbed her right, his grip unnecessarily rough. Good boys. Holden's voice dripped with satisfaction. Now, Mitchell, let's fix that regulation problem. He grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked her head back. Pain shot through her scalp, but Megan didn't make a sound. She locked eyes with Holden, and something passed between them, a silent battle of wills that the watching recruits could feel but not understand. Any last words before we begin? He asked mockingly. You're going to regret this, Sergeant. He laughed. I sincerely doubt that. The clippers touched her scalp. The first chunk of auburn hair fell to the ground, and with it something changed in the atmosphere. Several recruits looked away, unable to watch. Others stood frozen, their faces twisted with horror and shame. Destiny was crying silently, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Marcus had pulled out his journal and was writing furiously, documenting every detail of what he was witnessing. Holden worked slowly, deliberately, making the humiliation last as long as possible. "Look at this, everyone." He held up a handful of hair like a trophy. "This is what happens when you challenge my authority. This is what happens when you think you're special." More hair fell. Patches of bare scalp appeared exposed and vulnerable under the harsh Arizona sun. "Not so proud now, are you, Mitchell? Not so confident?" Megan said nothing. Her jaw was clenched so tight that the muscles stood out like steel cables, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. The silence was more unnerving than any response could have been. "Nothing to say." Holden's voice carried an edge of frustration. He had expected tears, begging, submission. Instead, he was getting stone-cold resistance that made him look like a bully rather than an authority figure. "Maybe we need to keep going until you learn some humility." He continued, cutting his movements, becoming rougher, more aggressive. The patches grew larger. The stubble became uneven. What should have been a simple head shaving was turning into deliberate mutilation. Still, Megan didn't break. Tyler's hands were shaking on her arm. "Sergeant, I think that's enough." "She's—" "Did I ask for your opinion, Grant?" "No, Sergeant, but—" "Then shut your mouth and hold her still." The clippers continued their work. 5 minutes. 10. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on Megan's increasingly exposed scalp. Finally, Holden stepped back to admire his handiwork. Her head was a patchwork of stubble and bare skin, deliberately uneven, designed for maximum humiliation. The woman who had arrived at Fort Cascade with quiet dignity now looked like a victim of violence. Which, of course, she was. "There." Holden's voice was triumphant. "Now you look like a real soldier, or at least what's left of one." The recruits stood in horrified silence. Megan slowly raised her head and met Holden's eyes. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried across the entire formation. "Are you finished, Sergeant?" Something flickered in his expression. Confusion. Unease. He had broken her appearance, but he hadn't broken her. The woman standing before him with a ruined scalp and dusty uniform still radiated a power that he couldn't understand or control. "For now," he said, but the triumph in his voice had faded. "Good." Megan's gaze didn't waver. "Because you just made the biggest mistake of your career." Holden stepped closer, his face flushing with anger. "Is that a threat, Mitchell?" "It's a promise." For a moment, no one moved. The tension between them was electric, dangerous, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then Holden laughed, but the sound was forced. "Dismissed. Everyone back to barracks. Mitchell, you've got latrine duty for the rest of the week. Maybe scrubbing toilets will teach you some respect." He turned and walked away without looking back. But Megan noticed that his steps were slightly faster than usual, his shoulders slightly tenser. He was beginning to understand that something wasn't right. The formation dissolved slowly. Most recruits hurried away, unable to meet Megan's eyes. A few lingered, their expressions torn between sympathy and fear. Destiny reached her first. "Oh God, Sarah." Tears streamed down her face as she stared at her friend's ruined scalp. "I'm so sorry. I should have done something. I should have—" "You did exactly what I asked." Megan's voice was calm. "Thank you for trusting me." "How can you be so calm? He just gave me everything I needed." Destiny's confusion was obvious, but before she could respond, Marcus appeared at their side. "I got it all," he said quietly. "Every second, every word. I even got photos when no one was looking." Megan turned to him, and for the first time, something approaching a smile crossed her face. Good. Keep those photos safe. They're going to be important. What are you planning? Justice. She walked toward the barracks without another word, leaving her friends staring after her with more questions than answers. 2 hours later, Megan made her move. The bank of payphones near the administrative building was deserted. Most recruits avoided the area, and the staff was occupied with afternoon duties. It was the perfect opportunity. She picked up the receiver and dialed a number she had memorized months ago. The phone rang once, twice. General Monroe's office. Colonel Peters speaking. Sir, this is Captain Callahan. I need to speak with the General immediately. Code 7. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Code 7 meant the mission was compromised. It meant immediate extraction was required. Hold, Captain. 30 seconds of silence. Then a familiar voice came on the line. Callahan, report. Ma'am, my cover has been compromised. Not by discovery, but by circumstance. Megan kept her voice steady, despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. I was subjected to unauthorized physical punishment this morning. Forced head shaving in front of 32 witnesses. The assault was conducted by Sergeant Holden personally. A pause. When General Monroe spoke again, her voice was ice. He assaulted one of my officers. Yes, ma'am. He did. And the evidence. Comprehensive. Financial fraud. Systematic harassment. Witness intimidation. False imprisonment of at least one recruit. And now assault on a superior officer during an authorized investigation. Do you have documentation? Everything is in my head, ma'am. Photographic memory, as you know. And I have a civilian witness who's been keeping written records throughout the assignment. Another pause. Another. The mission was supposed to last another 4 weeks. I understand that, ma'am. But Holden's actions today crossed a line that allows for immediate intervention. He's getting reckless. If we wait longer, someone else might get seriously hurt. Or you might, Monroe said quietly. Megan touched her bare scalp. I can handle it, General. But the other recruits can't. There are good people here who are suffering because of what Holden and his accomplices have created. They deserve protection. Silence stretched across the line. All right, Captain. Here's what's going to happen. I'm personally flying to Fort Cascade tomorrow morning. I'm bringing a full investigation team, military police, and enough legal authority to shut down that entire operation. Monroe's voice hardened. And when I arrive, Sergeant Holden is going to learn exactly who he assaulted. Understood, ma'am. One more thing, Callahan. Yes, ma'am. What he did to you, the humiliation, the physical assault that took courage to endure. Most officers would have broken cover long before this. I want you to know that your service will be recognized. Megan closed her eyes. I wasn't looking for recognition, ma'am. I was looking for justice. You'll get both. Monroe out. The line went dead. Megan hung up the phone and stood motionless for a long moment. The weight of weeks of abuse seemed to press down on her shoulders. The exhaustion, the humiliation, the constant pretense of weakness, it had all taken a toll that she was only now beginning to feel. But it was almost over. Tomorrow, everything would change. She walked back toward the barracks, her bare scalp catching the harsh afternoon light. Several recruits stared as she passed, their expressions mixing pity with confusion. The woman they thought they knew. Private Sarah Mitchell, the struggling recruit, the perpetual victim, moved with a different kind of energy now. Something had shifted. Destiny was waiting outside the barracks. Where did you go? Made a phone call. To who? Megan looked at her friend. To someone who's very interested in what happened here today. Sarah? Destiny grabbed her arm. Please, tell me what's going on. I've watched you for weeks. I've seen how you handle everything Holden throws at you. You're not who you say you are. I know it. Marcus knows it. Even Tyler suspects something. What do you think I am? I don't know. Destiny's voice cracked. But I know you're not weak. I know you're not scared. And I know that when Holden was cutting your hair, you looked at him like you were the one in control, not him." Megan was silent for a long moment. "You're a good friend, Destiny. Better than you know." "That's not an answer." "No, it's not." Megan started walking again. "But tomorrow, you'll understand everything. I promise." That night the barracks was quieter than usual. The trauma of what the recruits had witnessed hung over them like a storm cloud. Nobody talked about it directly, but everyone was thinking about it. The image of Megan standing motionless while Holden violated her was burned into their memories. Tyler Grant approached her bunk after lights out. "Mitchell, Sarah, I'm sorry." His voice was barely a whisper. "I held you while I didn't want to, but I was scared, and Tyler." Megan's voice cut through his stammering. "Look at me." He raised his eyes reluctantly. "What Holden did to you was almost as bad as what he did to me. He used your training against you. He exploited your respect for authority to make you complicit in something you knew was wrong." She paused. "That's not your fault. That's his. But I helped him hurt you. You were following what you believed were lawful orders. That's what soldiers are trained to do. Holden knew exactly how to manipulate that training." Megan's voice softened. "The guilt you're feeling right now, that's proof that you're a good person. A bad person wouldn't care." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "How are you so calm about this? He humiliated you in front of everyone." His voice broke. "Because I know something he doesn't." "What?" Megan smiled grimly. "I know that by this time tomorrow, Sergeant Holden is going to be in handcuffs. And everyone who participated in his system of abuse is going to face consequences they never imagined." Tyler stared at her. "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I'm not who you think I am, Tyler. None of you know who I really am." She lay back on her bunk. "But you will. Soon, everyone will." She closed her eyes, leaving Tyler standing in confused silence. Tomorrow, the masks would come off, and Fort Cascade would never be the same. The hours before dawn stretched like years. Megan lay awake listening to the breathing of sleeping recruits around her. In a few hours, helicopters would appear on the horizon. General Monroe would descend like divine judgment, and a reckoning would begin that would expose 12 years of corruption and abuse. She touched her ruined scalp one more time. What Holden had meant as the ultimate humiliation would become the evidence that destroyed him. Every patch of bare skin, every uneven cut, every moment of forced degradation would be documented, photographed, and presented in a military courtroom. He had wanted to break her. Instead, he had given her the weapon she needed to end him. The first light of dawn crept through the barracks windows, and somewhere in the distance, Megan heard the sound of approaching helicopters. The sound grew louder. Destiny sat up in her bunk, confusion crossing her face. "What is that?" Other recruits were stirring now, awakened by the unmistakable thrum of helicopter rotors cutting through the early morning air. Not one helicopter. Multiple. The sound was too loud, too coordinated to be anything routine. Megan was already dressed. "Sarah?" Destiny's voice carried a note of fear. "What's happening?" "Justice." Before Destiny could respond, the barracks door burst open. "Everyone up! Formation in 5 minutes!" Corporal Reynolds' voice was sharp, urgent, but Megan noticed something else beneath the authority. Panic. The recruits scrambled to dress, throwing on uniforms with the desperate efficiency of people who had learned that lateness meant punishment. But as they filed out into the morning light, they stopped in their tracks. 3 black helicopters were touching down on the parade ground. "Holy shit," Marcus breathed. "Those are command birds. Pentagon level." The helicopters disgorged personnel with mechanical precision. Military police in dress uniforms. Men and women in civilian suits that screamed federal authority. Legal officers with briefcases. And at the center of it all, a woman whose presence commanded immediate attention. General Catherine Monroe. Her silver hair caught the morning light as she strode across the parade ground with the bearing of someone who owned every piece of earth beneath her feet. Her uniform displayed enough ribbons and decorations to fill a museum, and her eyes swept the assembled chaos with the cold calculation of a surgeon preparing to operate. "Who is that?" Destiny whispered. Megan said nothing. But something in her posture had changed. The hunched shoulders of Private Sarah Mitchell were beginning to straighten. The defeated expression was fading, replaced by something harder, more focused. Tyler noticed. "Sarah? You okay?" "I'm fine, Tyler. Better than fine." Sergeant Holden appeared from the administrative building, his face ashen. Megan watched him approach the general with obvious reluctance, his usual swagger completely absent. "General Monroe, ma'am. This is an unexpected honor. If I had known you were coming, I would have—" "You would have what, Sergeant?" Monroe's voice cut through his stammering like a blade. "Prepared a better performance." Holden's face went pale. "Ma'am, I don't understand." "No, I don't suppose you do." Monroe turned to her entourage. "Begin processing. I want every member of this training staff interviewed within the hour. Nobody leaves this base without my authorization." "Yes, ma'am." The military police spread out with practiced efficiency, their presence transforming Fort Cascade from a training facility into something resembling a crime scene. Holden tried again. "General, if this is about some complaints, I can assure you that everything here is conducted according to—" "Sergeant Holden." Monroe's voice dropped to a dangerous register. "Do yourself a favor and stop talking. Everything you say from this moment forward can and will be used against you in a court-martial proceeding." The blood drained from Holden's face completely. "Court-martial, ma'am, there must be some mistake." "The only mistake was yours, Sergeant." Monroe's eyes found Megan in the formation, and something passed between them, a moment of recognition that was too brief for others to notice. "Take him to the processing center. He's to be questioned immediately." Two MPs stepped forward. "This is outrageous." Holden's voice rose with desperation. "I've served this army for 20 years. You can't just—" "I can do exactly that, Sergeant, and I am." Monroe nodded to the MPs. "Remove him." The recruits watched in stunned silence as their tormentor was escorted away. Holden cast one final glance back at the formation, his eyes finding Megan. For the first time, she saw fear in them. Real fear. The morning dissolved into organized chaos. Investigators set up stations throughout the administrative building. Recruits were called one by one for interviews that lasted anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. The questions were detailed, specific, covering everything from financial transactions to training incidents to personal observations of staff behavior. Destiny emerged from her session visibly shaken. "They know everything," she told Megan as they waited in the corridor. "They asked about things that happened during the first week, specific dates, exact quotes. It's like they had a script." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. Everything I saw." Destiny's eyes searched Megan's face. "They asked a lot of questions about you, about the head shaving, about how you reacted. They seemed really interested in your behavior throughout training." Marcus appeared from another room, his journal clutched in his hands. "They took copies of everything, every entry, every observation." He looked at Megan with new understanding in his eyes. "They already knew what I was going to tell them. They were just confirming." "Confirming what?" Destiny demanded. Before Marcus could answer, a lieutenant approached their group. "Private Mitchell." Megan stood. "Yes. General Monroe requests your presence in the command center, immediately." Destiny grabbed her arm. "Sarah, what's going on? Why does a general want to talk to you specifically?" Megan looked at her friend, the woman who had stood by her through weeks of abuse, who had offered food when she couldn't eat, who had cried when Holden violated her. The woman who deserved the truth. "You're about to find out." She followed the lieutenant across the parade ground. The command center had been established in the base commander's office. General Monroe was standing behind the desk, studying a file that Megan recognized immediately her real service record. "Close the door, Lieutenant." The door clicked shut. "Captain Callahan." Monroe's voice was formal, but there was warmth beneath it. "Your report was thorough, perhaps the most comprehensive intelligence gathering I've seen from an undercover operation." Megan came to attention. "Thank you, ma'am." "At ease." Monroe set down the file. "The medical staff has documented your injuries. The photographs will be damning in court. And the testimony we're collecting from the other recruits corroborates everything you reported." She paused. "Holden is finished. So is Captain Morrison. So is everyone who participated in or covered up what was happening here. What about Private Davis? The recruit they framed for theft. Already being released. The charges will be dropped, and he'll be reassigned to a proper training facility." Monroe's expression softened slightly. "You asked about him specifically in your report. Why? Because he was innocent. Because they destroyed his life to protect their corruption." Megan met the general's eyes. "This investigation was never just about gathering evidence, ma'am. It was about protecting the people who couldn't protect themselves." Monroe nodded slowly. "That's exactly why I chose you for this assignment." She walked around the desk. "In about 15 minutes, I'm going to address the entire company. They need to know the truth about what happened here and about who you really are." "I understand, ma'am." "Do you?" Monroe studied her face. "These recruits have come to know you as Sarah Mitchell. Some of them have formed genuine bonds with you. When they learn the truth, those relationships will change. Are you prepared for that?" Megan thought about Destiny's friendship, Marcus's loyalty, Tyler's guilt and redemption. "Some changes are necessary, General, and sometimes the truth is worth more than comfort." "Agreed." Monroe glanced at her watch. "Let's end this properly." The recruits were assembled on the parade ground for the second time that morning. The atmosphere was electric with confusion and speculation. Holden's removal had sent shockwaves through the company, and the presence of so many high-ranking officials had created a sense that something unprecedented was about to happen. Megan stood apart from the formation next to General Monroe and her staff. The other recruits cast confused glances at her positioning, unable to understand why their fellow trainee was standing with generals instead of in line with them. Destiny's face was a mask of bewilderment. Marcus was writing in his journal, trying to document everything. Tyler looked like he might faint. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Monroe's voice carried across the parade ground with the authority of decades of command. "You are witnessing the conclusion of an official investigation into criminal activity at this installation. Over the past several weeks, evidence has been gathered documenting systematic abuse, financial fraud, and corruption at every level of the training staff." A murmur rippled through the formation. 17 personnel are currently under investigation. Some will face administrative action. Others will face court-martial. And Sergeant First Class Victor Holden will face charges including assault, fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of authority. Monroe paused, letting the weight of her words settle. These are serious crimes. They betrayed every principle that the United States Army represents. The recruits listened in stunned silence. However, Monroe's voice sharpened. What Sergeant Holden didn't know, what none of the corrupt staff members knew, is that they were being watched. Every word they spoke, every action they took, every abuse they committed was being documented by someone they believed was their victim. She gestured toward Megan. "Step forward, Captain." The word "captain" hit the formation like a physical blow. Megan walked to stand beside General Monroe, and as she moved, something extraordinary happened. The hunched posture of Private Sarah Mitchell straightened into the confident bearing of a trained officer. The uncertain expression became focused and authoritative. The struggling recruit disappeared, entirely replaced by someone the other soldiers had never seen before. "Ladies and gentlemen," Monroe announced, her voice carrying absolute authority. Allow me to introduce Captain Megan Callahan, Military Intelligence Special Investigations, currently assigned to my personal staff at the Pentagon." The silence that followed was absolute. Then chaos erupted. "What?" Destiny's voice cracked through the stunned quiet. "That's impossible. She's Sarah. She's my bunkmate. She's one of the youngest and most accomplished intelligence officers in the Army," Monroe continued. Captain Callahan was assigned to infiltrate Fort Cascade and document the full extent of criminal activity that traditional investigators had been unable to penetrate. Tyler Grant's face went white as chalk. His legs buckled, and he would have fallen if the recruit next to him hadn't grabbed his arm. The knowledge that he had physically restrained a superior officer, that he had participated in assaulting someone who outranked nearly everyone on the base, was obviously overwhelming. Marcus was staring at Megan with an expression of sudden understanding. "The questions you asked about command structure, the way you never really broke no matter what he did, the confidence you showed when everyone else would have collapsed." His voice was barely a whisper. "You were building a case the whole time." Megan met his eyes and nodded slightly. "For 6 weeks," Monroe continued, "Captain Callahan endured systematic harassment, sleep deprivation, psychological torture, and ultimately physical assault. She maintained her cover through conditions that would have broken most soldiers, officer or enlisted. She did this not for recognition, but because there were innocent people suffering under a corrupt system that needed to be exposed." She turned to Megan. "Captain, is there anything you'd like to say?" Megan faced the formation, her fellow recruits, her friends, the people she had lived with and suffered with for 6 weeks. "What happened to me was not unique. Holden and his accomplices have been doing this for 12 years. Hundreds of recruits have suffered through the same abuse you witnessed. Some washed out their military careers destroyed before they started. Some transferred carrying psychological scars that will never fully heal. Some simply disappeared from the system, written off as failures rather than victims." Her voice hardened. "That ends today. The evidence gathered during this investigation will not only bring justice for what happened here, it will reform the entire training system. What you experienced, what you witnessed, what you survived, will protect thousands of future soldiers from going through the same thing." She looked directly at Tyler. "Private Grant, step forward." Tyler stumbled out of formation, his face streaked with tears. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. When Sergeant Holden ordered me to hold you, I knew it was wrong, but I was scared, and I—" "Tyler." Megan's voice was firm but gentle. "Look at me." He raised his eyes reluctantly. "What Holden did to you was almost as bad as what he did to me. He exploited your training, your respect for authority, your desire to be a good soldier. He made you complicit in his crimes, not because you're a bad person, but because you're a good soldier who was manipulated by a corrupt superior." Tyler's shoulders shook with silent sobs. "That's not your fault. That's his. And when this investigation is complete, the record will show that you were a victim, not an accomplice." She paused. "Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." His voice was barely audible. "Thank you, ma'am." Return to formation. As Tyler stumbled back to his place, Destiny stepped forward without being called. "Permission to speak, ma'am." Megan nodded. "I don't understand." Destiny's voice cracked with emotion. "We were friends. I thought we were friends. Was any of that real? Or was I just part of your cover?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Megan took a moment before responding. "Private Brooks, when you shared your food with me after I missed meals, when you stayed awake to make sure I was okay, when you cried during what Holden did to me and wanted to intervene, even though I told you not to, was that real?" Destiny nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Then our friendship was real too." Megan's voice softened. "Sarah Mitchell was a cover identity. But the woman who valued your kindness, who admired your courage, who will remember your friendship for the rest of her life, that was me. That was always me." Destiny broke formation and threw her arms around Megan. The hug lasted only a moment, but the message it sent was clear to everyone watching. Whatever boundaries had existed between officer and enlisted, between investigator and subject, had dissolved in the reality of genuine human connection. General Monroe allowed the moment before speaking again. What you witnessed today represents the best of what military justice can achieve. A corrupt system has been exposed. Criminals will face consequences, and the people who suffered under that system will receive the recognition and support they deserve. She surveyed the formation one final time. This investigation is ongoing. Some of you will be called to testify. Others will be asked to provide additional statements. I expect full cooperation from everyone. Her voice hardened. And I expect absolute confidentiality. What happened at Fort Cascade will eventually become public record, but until then, you are not to discuss the details with anyone outside official channels. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am. The response came from 32 throats simultaneously. Dismissed. The formation dissolved into clusters of shocked, emotional recruits. Megan found herself surrounded by people who had known her as Sarah Mitchell. People who were struggling to reconcile the struggling recruit they remembered with the intelligence officer standing before them. Marcus reached her first. I knew something was different about you, from the very beginning. The way you asked questions, the way you observed everything. He shook his head in amazement. But I never imagined this. You're a good observer, Marcus. Have you considered military intelligence as a career path? His eyes widened. Are you serious? I'll put in a recommendation if you're interested. The Army needs people who notice what others miss. Before Marcus could respond, Tyler appeared at her elbow. Ma'am, Captain, I don't know what to call you now. Megan is fine. We've been through too much together for formality. Tyler's face crumpled. I still can't believe when I was holding your arms and He couldn't finish the sentence. Tyler, listen to me. Megan gripped his shoulder. What happened to me was exactly what needed to happen. Holden's assault gave me the evidence I needed to bring down his entire operation. If you hadn't followed his orders, if you had refused, he would have found someone else, and you would have become a target instead of a witness. But, no buts. You did what you had to do, and when this is over, when the courts-martial are finished and the reforms are implemented, you'll be able to say that you helped bring down a monster. She paused. That's something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Tyler wiped his eyes. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. Destiny was the last to approach. She stood in front of Megan with her arms crossed. Her expression a complicated mixture of emotions, hurt, admiration, confusion, and something that looked like hope. So, what happens now? Now the legal process begins. Holden and the others will face justice. The reforms will be implemented, and you'll complete your training under instructors who actually deserve to wear the uniform. And you? Megan smiled slightly. I'll go back to Washington, write my reports, maybe get a few days off before the next assignment. Will I ever see you again? The question carried weight that both of them understood. I'd like that. Megan reached into her pocket and pulled out a card. This is my official contact information. When you graduate, when you get your first assignment, write to me. Let me know how you're doing. Destiny took the card like it was made of gold. I will, I promise. And Destiny, yeah. What you did for me, the kindness, the loyalty, the friendship, that's exactly what the Army needs. Don't let what happened here change who you are. The world needs more people like you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Destiny straightened to attention and snapped off a salute that was crisp, professional, and filled with respect. Thank you, Captain, for everything. Megan returned the salute. Thank you, Private Brooks, for reminding me what we're fighting for. 3 hours later, Megan boarded General Monroe's helicopter. As the aircraft lifted off, she looked down at Fort Cascade growing smaller beneath her. Somewhere on that base, Holden was being processed for court-martial. Somewhere the recruits she had lived with were trying to make sense of everything they had learned. Somewhere, The corrupt system that had flourished for 12 years was finally being dismantled. General Monroe sat across from her reviewing documents. "You did good work, Captain. Better than good. This investigation will have ripple effects throughout the entire military training system." "Thank you, ma'am." "There will be commendations, probably a promotion. The Joint Chiefs are already talking about naming the new oversight protocols after you." Megan touched her bare scalp, feeling the uneven stubble where Holden's clippers had done their damage. "I wasn't looking for recognition, General. I was looking for justice." Monroe looked up from her documents and met Megan's eyes. "You got both, Captain. You got both." The helicopter banked toward Washington, carrying with it evidence that would reshape military justice for years to come. And behind it, Fort Cascade began its transformation from a place of fear into a place of honor. 6 months felt like a lifetime. Megan stood at the window of her Pentagon office, watching the winter sun set over Washington. Her reflection stared back at her hair now grown past her shoulders longer than it had been before Fort Cascade. She had considered cutting it short again, making it easier to manage, more practical for an officer of her rank. But she had decided to let it grow. Every strand was a reminder of what she had survived, what she had accomplished, and what had been sacrificed to bring justice to a place that had forgotten what the word meant. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Colonel Peters entered with a folder marked classified. "The verdict came down 20 minutes ago, Major." Major. She still wasn't completely used to the promotion that had come through 3 months earlier, jumping her ahead of officers with twice her experience. General Monroe had personally pinned the gold oak leaves on her uniform, calling it the least the Army could do for someone who had changed military justice forever. And Peters handed her the folder. Guilty on all counts: assault on a superior officer, conspiracy, fraud, abuse of authority, conduct unbecoming. He paused. The judge was not merciful. Megan opened the folder and read the sentence. Sergeant First Class Victor Holden. 8 years federal imprisonment. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and benefits. Reduction in rank to private. 8 years. For 12 years of systematic abuse that had destroyed countless careers and broken countless spirits. It seemed almost insufficient. But it was justice. Real, documented, undeniable justice. What about the others? Captain Morrison got 6 years for his role in the cover-up. Corporal Reynolds got 4. Master Sergeant Cole got 5. Peters consulted his notes. In total, 14 personnel from Fort Cascade are serving sentences ranging from 18 months to 8 years. Another 12 received administrative punishment, including discharge. 26 people. An entire corrupt ecosystem dismantled because one woman had been willing to endure hell to expose the truth. And the Callahan protocols? Peters smiled slightly. Fully implemented across all basic training facilities as of last month. Independent oversight committees. Anonymous reporting systems. Mandatory psychological evaluation for drill instructors. Real-time monitoring of recruit treatment. He shook his head. You changed the entire system, Major. Every recruit who goes through basic training from now on will be protected by what you built. Megan set down the folder. It wasn't just me. It was Destiny, Marcus, Tyler, all the recruits who testified, all the people who finally felt safe enough to tell the truth. Maybe. But none of it would have happened without you. The phone on her desk rang. She answered it. Major Callahan. Megan. General Monroe's voice was warm. I heard the verdict. How are you feeling? Satisfied, ma'am. Not celebratory, just satisfied. That's the right response. Monroe paused. I have some news that might interest you. Private Destiny Brooks graduated from Officer Candidate School last week, top of her class. She's been assigned to military intelligence starting next month. Something warm spread through Megan's chest. I didn't know she applied. Apparently, someone inspired her to consider a career in investigations. She mentioned something about wanting to protect people the way someone once protected her. Monroe's voice carried a hint of amusement. She's been asking about you. Wants to know if you'd be willing to serve as her mentor. I'd be honored? I thought you might say that. I've already approved the arrangement. Monroe paused again. There's something else. Private Marcus Chen finished his training as a Criminal Investigation Division Specialist. He's requesting assignment to your unit. Megan laughed softly. Are you sending me everyone from Fort Cascade? Only the best ones, the ones who showed courage when courage was costly. Monroe's voice grew serious. You built something at that base, Megan. Not just a case, a team, a family. People who saw the worst of what military service can become and chose to fight for the best of what it should be. And Tyler Grant? Completed his training with distinction. He's shipping out to his first assignment next week. Before he left, he submitted a written statement for Holden's sentencing hearing. Monroe paused. It was powerful testimony. He talked about being manipulated, about the guilt he carried, about how your forgiveness gave him the strength to move forward. The judge cited it specifically when handing down the sentence. Megan closed her eyes. Tyler had been carrying so much weight since that morning on the parade ground. Knowing that he had found a way to turn his guilt into something positive meant more to her than any commendation. Thank you for telling me, ma'am. Thank you for giving me something worth telling. Monroe's voice softened. Get some rest, Major. You've earned it. The line went dead. Megan sat in the growing darkness of her office, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had been Private Sarah Mitchell, a struggling recruit with a manufactured background and a mission that seemed almost impossible. Now, she was Major Megan Callahan, architect of the most significant military justice reform in a generation. But the titles and the accomplishments weren't what mattered most. What mattered was that somewhere right now, a drill sergeant was thinking twice before abusing a recruit. What mattered was that somewhere a young soldier was filing a complaint through the anonymous reporting system, confident that their voice would be heard. What mattered was that the culture of fear and silence that had allowed Holden and his accomplices to flourish for 12 years was finally permanently broken. That was worth everything she had sacrificed. 2 weeks later, Megan returned to Fort Cascade. The base looked different now. Not physically, the buildings were the same, the parade ground unchanged, the Arizona desert still stretching endlessly toward the horizon. But the atmosphere had transformed completely. Recruits moved with confidence rather than fear. Drill instructors maintained discipline without cruelty. The sound of shouted orders was accompanied by the sound of encouragement, of teaching, of mentorship that actually built soldiers instead of breaking them. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos met her at the entrance. Major Callahan, it's an honor to have you back. Thank you, Sergeant, but I'm not here officially, just visiting. Santos smiled. I know. Private Brooks mentioned you might be coming. She's in the training area. I'll take you there. They walked across ground that held very different memories for Megan now. The spot where Holden had forced the head shaving. The barracks where she had spent sleepless nights, documenting abuse. The payphone where she had made the call that changed everything. The recruits still talk about what happened here, Santos said quietly. Not the abuse, we don't dwell on that, but your story. What you sacrificed. What you accomplished. She glanced at Megan. You're something of a legend now, Major. I'm not comfortable with that. Maybe not. But they need heroes. They need to know that someone was willing to suffer for them, to fight for them, to believe that they deserved better. Santos stopped walking. The night before I took over as senior drill instructor, I read your complete report. Every page, every incident, every moment of abuse you endured while maintaining your cover. Megan waited. I made a promise to myself that night. No recruit under my supervision would ever experience what those soldiers experienced. No one would ever leave this base with scars that shouldn't exist. Santos met her eyes. That's your real legacy, Major. Not the protocols or the reforms. It's the promise that people like me made because of what you showed us was possible. Before Megan could respond, a familiar voice rang out across the training area. Major Callahan. Destiny Brooks was running toward her in full uniform, her face split by a grin that seemed to light up the entire desert. She stopped short and snapped to attention, but her joy was impossible to contain. "Second Lieutenant Brooks, reporting for duty, ma'am." Megan returned the salute, then did something that probably violated a dozen protocols. She pulled Destiny into a hug. "Look at you," she said when they separated. "An officer, top of your class, military intelligence." "I had a good role model." Destiny's eyes were bright with emotion. "When I watched you stand there while he did what he did, and you never broke, never gave him the satisfaction of seeing you cry. I decided right then that I wanted to be like you, strong enough to endure anything for the right cause. You were always strong, Destiny. You just needed someone to show you that strength comes in different forms." "Maybe." Destiny grinned. "But I definitely needed someone to show me that the Army could be better than what we experienced, that there were officers worth following, that justice was actually possible." They walked together toward the parade ground where a group of recruits was assembling for afternoon formation. "How does it feel?" Megan asked. "Being back here?" "Strange. Good strange, mostly." Destiny looked around at the base that had once been her nightmare. "The first time I walked onto this parade ground as an officer, I cried. Not because of bad memories, but because I realized how much had changed. The fear is gone. The cruelty is gone. What's left is actually what basic training is supposed to be. And you want to spend your career making sure it stays that way. Someone has to." Destiny met her eyes. "Someone has to make sure that people like Holden never get power again. Someone has to be watching, ready to step in when the system starts failing. You taught me that. I taught you to endure. You taught yourself everything else." A commotion near the administrative building caught their attention. A young man in dress uniform was walking toward them, his pace quickening as he recognized Megan. Tyler Grant. He looked different now. The nervous, guilt-ridden recruit who had held Megan's arms while Holden assaulted her was gone. In his place was a confident young soldier with steady eyes and squared shoulders. He stopped in front of her and saluted crisply. "Major Callahan, I heard you were visiting. I had to come." Megan returned the salute. "Private Grant, you're looking well." "Thanks to you, ma'am." His voice was steady, but emotion ran beneath the surface. "I ship out tomorrow. First real assignment. But I couldn't leave without seeing you one more time." "How are you doing? Really?" Tyler considered the question carefully. "Better. The counseling helped. The testimony helped more. Being able to stand up in that courtroom and tell the truth about what Holden made me do, what he made all of us do, it was like finally putting down a weight I'd been carrying for months. I read your statement. It was brave. It was necessary." He paused. "Ma'am, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it." Megan nodded for him to continue. "When I was holding your arms that morning, when I felt you standing there so calm while Tyler's voice caught for a moment. "I hated myself. I hated what I was doing. I hated that I was too scared to stop it. But afterwards, when you told me it wasn't my fault, when you said I was a victim too, that changed something in me." "Tyler, please, let me finish." He took a breath. "You could have blamed me. You had every right to. But instead, you showed me grace. You showed me forgiveness. You showed me that the people we become aren't defined by the worst moments of our lives, but by what we do afterwards." His eyes glistened. "I'm going to be a better soldier because of what you taught me. A better leader. A better man. And every time I have the chance to show someone else that same grace, I'm going to do it." Megan reached out and gripped his shoulder. "That's all I could ever ask for." "No, ma'am." Tyler's voice strengthened. "You asked for justice. And you got it. But you gave us something even more valuable. You gave us hope." Before Megan could respond, another familiar face appeared. Marcus Chen, wearing the insignia of a Criminal Investigation Division specialist, walked toward them with his characteristic quiet confidence. "Major, I heard there was a reunion happening. Thought I'd crash it." "Marcus." Megan felt her smile widening. "I heard you were requesting assignment to my unit." "If you'll have me." His expression was serious. "What you did at Fort Cascade, the investigation, the documentation, the way you built a case while everyone around you was trying to break you, that's the kind of work I want to do. That's the kind of investigator I want to become." "You already were that investigator. You just needed the opportunity to prove it." "Maybe." Marcus pulled a worn notebook from his pocket. "I kept everything. Every observation from those 6 weeks. Every detail I noticed about you, about Holden, about the whole corrupt system." He handed it to her. "I thought you might want it, for the archives, or just to remember." Megan opened the notebook and flipped through pages covered in Marcus's neat handwriting. Observations about training methods, questions about Megan's true identity, detailed accounts of abuse that had later become critical testimony. "This is incredible, Marcus. It's yours. It always was, really. I was just holding it for you." The four of them stood together on the parade ground, the officer who had sacrificed everything, and the 3 soldiers whose lives had been transformed by her courage. Around them, Fort Cascade continued its daily routine recruits training under instructors who actually deserved the title, a military system slowly healing from wounds that had festered for too long. "What happens now?" Destiny asked. Megan looked at her team, because that's what they had become, a team, forged in the fire of shared trauma and mutual redemption. "Now we keep fighting. Different battles, different enemies, but the same mission." She met each of their eyes in turn. "We protect the people who can't protect themselves. We expose corruption wherever we find it. We make sure that what happened here never happens again." "Sounds like a lot of work," Tyler said. "It is, but it's worth it." Megan smiled. "And we don't have to do it alone." As the sun began to set over Fort Cascade, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and gold, Megan felt something she hadn't experienced since before her assignment began. Peace. Not the absence of struggle or the end of challenges, but the deep, quiet satisfaction of knowing that her suffering had meant something. That the worst experience of her career had become the foundation for the best work of her life. That the woman who had stood motionless while her hair was shorn away had emerged stronger, more purposeful, more certain of her place in the world. Holden had wanted to break her. Instead, he had forged her into something unbreakable. The helicopter that would take her back to Washington was waiting on the landing pad. As Megan walked toward it, Destiny fell into step beside her one final time. "Ma'am, one more question." "Go ahead." "Was it worth it? All the pain, all the humiliation, all the weeks of pretending to be someone you weren't. Was it worth what you got in the end?" Megan stopped walking and turned to face the young officer who had once been a frightened recruit, sharing her food with a struggling bunkmate. "Every moment of it." Her voice carried absolute conviction. Because the end wasn't just justice for one base or punishment for one corrupt sergeant. The end was you, Destiny, and Tyler, and Marcus, and every recruit who will go through basic training from now on without fear of abuse. The end was a system that finally works the way it should. She paused. "That's worth any price." Destiny saluted one final time. "Then we'll make sure your sacrifice wasn't wasted. We'll protect what you built. We'll honor what you endured." "I know you will." Megan returned the salute. "That's why I'm leaving it in your hands." She boarded the helicopter without looking back. As the aircraft lifted off, she watched Fort Cascade grow smaller beneath her. The parade ground where she had been humiliated. The barracks where she had suffered. The base that had once been a symbol of everything wrong with military culture. Now it was a symbol of something else entirely. hope, redemption. The power of one person to change an entire system through courage, endurance, and an unshakable belief that justice was possible. General Monroe's voice crackled through her headset. Major Callahan, I have a new assignment for you when you return. Another facility with troubling reports. Another corrupt system that needs to be exposed. Megan smiled grimly. I'm ready, General. I know you are. That's why you're the best. The helicopter banked toward Washington, carrying a woman who had discovered that true strength wasn't about never being broken. True strength was about what you built from the pieces. Below her, the desert stretched endlessly toward the horizon, unchanged by the human dramas that played out beneath its indifferent sky. But somewhere on that desert, in a base called Fort Cascade, 32 recruits were training under instructors who respected them. A corrupt sergeant was beginning an 8-year prison sentence, and a young lieutenant named Destiny Brooks was preparing to continue the work that had begun with one woman's willingness to sacrifice everything for what was right. The mission was complete, but the mission would never really be over. Because as long as there were people who abused power, there would need to be people willing to stop them. As long as there were systems that failed to protect the vulnerable, there would need to be those brave enough to expose the truth. As long as there was injustice in the world, there would need to be warriors like Megan Callahan warriors who understood that the most important battles weren't fought with weapons, but with patience, documentation, and an unbreakable commitment to what was right. They had mocked her. They had shaved her head. They had tried to destroy her spirit and break her will. And in the end, they had created the very instrument of their own destruction. Because some people weren't meant to be broken. Some people were meant to break the systems that tried to break them. And some stories didn't end with victims. They ended with justice.